Sevhead Creative at sevhead.com presents the audio web series Epyphany, Born from the Sea, written and produced by Don Severance, and narrated by Professor Proteus. Episode 5, Chapter 9, Pisces Corporation. Thoreau and Sajah didn't leave the ship for 3 days. Much to Thoreau's surprise, Sajah cancelled meetings with some of the most influential people on the planet, something he'd never seen her do. She appeared unusually relaxed. As he recounted stories of his days at sea, Thoreau found his memories oddly hazy. A lingering sense of mystery clung to his experience. Nevertheless, with most of the data he needed for his research and several promising designs completed, he considered the trip a resounding success. Sajah nodded and smiled as Thoreau spoke, entranced with the sound of his voice more than with his words. She had no idea what he was rambling about, but she knew he was happy, and more importantly, happy to be with her. Thoreau amused her on many levels, and she could easily picture them together. He fit perfectly into her grand plan. With his connections to the scientific community and her vast network of corporate and political ties, they could, in theory, rule the world. The thought made her smile, a pleasant tingle awakening her dormant ambition. During Thoreau's absence, Sajah had put her career into overdrive. She had become the company's youngest majority shareholder, her power now eclipsing that of the current CEO. With such influence, she didn't need the title of chairman of the board to wield control. The Pisces fleet was expanding rapidly, absorbing smaller companies, and its tentacles were extending into every corner of the food industry. Cruise lines, shipping, and supporty technologies included. Her plan to dominate the seafood supply chain was well on track. Any press they couldn't win, they simply bought. And with control of over 40% of the major media markets, they shaped the narrative. Thoreau's involvement would lend the credibility needed to capture the hearts and minds of the masses. As her father would say, in his rather poor pirate impression, it would be clear sailing, matey. The unexpected bonus in all of this was that Sajah genuinely cared for Thoreau. In his absence, she had realized she was falling in love with him. She seldom mixed love and business, but this relationship held potential beyond anything she had imagined. This time, she was determined not to push him away. On the 4th morning after Thoreau's arrival, they woke early, both ready to return to their respective missions. Thoreau appreciated being with a woman equally engaged in her work. Though their goals differed, the past 3 days gave him hope for a mutually beneficial compromise. Sajah seemed softer, more open than the last time they had spoken. She was in a unique position to do good, and if he could guide her toward a more visionary business model, perhaps she could redefine profits in broader terms than just dollars. He knew she wasn't blind to the damage her company was inflicting on the oceans. For 3 days they had avoided the topic. But now, as the sweat dried and the smoke cleared, the elephant in the room could no longer be ignored. Its name was the Pisces Corporation. Episode 5, Chapter 10, Distraction. Several weeks had passed since Thoreau had left Ujjayi. After Dali's intervention and intense discussions with Bliss, Epyphany found it increasingly easier to leave thoughts of Thoreau behind. When she did think of him, it was with a sweet sadness. She was grateful for what they had shared and accepted the harsh truth of their separate realities. In the wake of her loss, Epyphany had come to appreciate her friends and her life on Ujjayi even more. The days passed pleasantly, calm, uneventful. Epyphany wasn't unhappy, but she needed change, a challenge. If she couldn't have love, at the very least, she needed purpose. The day started like any other. It was cool and quiet, with a gentle luminosity washing the cavern temple walls in a soothing, soft glow. The tribe was relaxing, floating aimlessly in the rejuvenating pools surrounding the gold tower, soothed by Bliss's songs and comforted by the shimmering reflection of the chrysalis. Eventually, they grew restless and collectively agreed to make their way through the tunnel to the lagoon. Revitalized by the warm sun, they began swimming along the perimeter. Their leisurely swim soon turned into a spontaneous competition. Bliss watched from the shore and Reefer circled overhead. The rest of the tribe swam with exceptional speed. To keep things interesting, the quickest among them hung back for the first lap. Though Epyphany wasn't as aerodynamically designed as the others, she compensated with sheer power. Magnum, faster than any other alligator, was built for sprinting, not distance. He was the first to drop out. On the third lap, the pace quickened. Surprisingly, Tiny Zip managed to hang in for another lap, skipping over the wake left by Speed's streamlined carapace as he sliced through the surf. The tribe was seldom surprised by the race outcomes, but that never dampened the fun. Dali consistently claimed third place, while Epyphany and Irie faced off in the final lap. Moving so fast, they appeared as two streaks of colour and spray circling the lagoon. As usual, Irie made a slow victory lap, proudly displaying her beautiful sail fin. The impromptu race was a nice distraction, but it left them restless. They decided a change of scenery was in order and made plans for a recreational exploration of a neighbouring island. Bliss volunteered to stay behind as guardian of Ujai. With help from Bliss and the Gold Tower, Epyphany and the tribe plotted a route that would keep them out of shipping lanes and off military sonar. They knew there was always a chance of an unexpected sighting by private vessels or drug runners, but Epiphany's unique hypersensitivity to sound and motion had always helped them avoid discovery. It had been over a year since any of the tribe had ventured far from Ujai, and they eagerly anticipated the vast open sea and the mystery of adventure. Thoughts of Thoreau and the mixed emotions left in his wake were far from their minds. The day was calm and clear. Storm waited outside the lagoon, with Reefer perched comfortably on his back. The tribe enthusiastically made their way past the reef. Epyphany reminded everyone to slow down and conserve their strength. The destination was 3 or 4 days away under good conditions, and the ocean's weather was as unpredictable as human behavior. Along the way, they hoped to find tiny, uncharted islands for rest. If not, Epyphany knew she could always hitch a ride with Storm. For 2 days, the weather remained pleasant, allowing them to cover several hundred miles. The journey served them well, both mentally and physically, an antidote to the island life that had made them all a little soft. The tribe's bond strengthened as they fell into efficient patterns of communication and teamwork. Occasionally, they encountered schools of fish, some reminding them of their heritage, others becoming lunch. As a group, they felt safe. Larger predators could sense their collective power and steered clear. Around mid-morning on the third day, Epyphany signaled a stop. She had started her day with an uneasy feeling, a subtle shift in her consciousness, a slight change in mood. She hadn't mentioned it earlier because it was so faint. But as the morning wore on, it grew into a nagging sensation of discomfort, then into a tangible vibration. She couldn't pinpoint the source, and it turned out that a few others were experiencing a similar, albeit milder, version of the vibe. It crossed her mind that Bliss might be trying to send her a message. Just as she pondered that possibility, the entire tribe felt a pulse, as if a bomb had exploded underwater in the distance. It wasn't disorienting, but it was followed by a secondary wave of distress. Epyphany, Dali, and Storm were most affected by the second wave. Now they understood the source. A single dolphin couldn't generate such a powerful signal. Somewhere out there, a large pod of dolphins was in serious trouble. Episode 5, Chapter 11, An Appointment. A couple of months had passed since Thoreau's return, and he and Sajah were taking full advantage of their limited time together. During that period, Thoreau traveled to several major cities worldwide, advocating for the global oceanic recovery utility, GORU. Convincing world leaders that the health of the oceans and their inhabitants was in serious decline had proven to be a difficult task. Though the entire scientific community agreed the planet faced an impending environmental disaster, corporate and political leaders were largely indifferent, viewing it as just another unpleasant issue with little immediate incentive to address. When he mentioned this frustration to Sajah, she merely nodded and changed the subject. He had begun to notice that whenever he brought up environmental concerns, she would steer the conversation in another direction. Thoreau longed to share his deep concern with her, hoping to engage and enlighten her, maybe even convince her to join him in his crusade to save the oceans. Since his return, he'd been hopeful that their rekindled affection might bridge the gap between their divergent political and cultural viewpoints. But he couldn't seem to break through her defenses. Determined, Thoreau decided to schedule a formal meeting. Sajah was enjoying another challenging day in the stark luxury of her penthouse office. Although it had been over a year since she acquired the most sought-after real estate in Pisces Tower, she still marveled at the breathtaking view of downtown Seattle and Puget Sound. Her brief reverie was interrupted by her assistant's buzz. "Your next appointment is here." She glanced at the calendar. GORU. "Oh no," she muttered. "I'm not in the mood for this. I gave them $100 million. What more do they want?" When the door opened, she was caught off guard. Thoreau walked in, smiling, wearing an uncharacteristic suit and tie, and carrying his ubiquitous, shiny aluminum attaché case. He seldom left home without his laptop. "This is a pleasant surprise," she greeted, masking her unease. "I'm here on official business," he replied with a disarming smile. "I hope you'll forgive the ambush. There are things I'd like to discuss that have nothing to do with our relationship and everything to do with Pisces Corp. While I know you have people to handle these matters, I believe some issues are best addressed from the top down. After all, you make the final decisions." "Well, this all sounds very formal," she replied, trying to keep warmth in her voice, though she was already on the defensive. "Since you've scheduled the time, you have my full and undivided attention." "Thank you. I know you're busy, so I'll get straight to the point. Where can I plug this in?" Thoreau opened his laptop, and Sajah synced it to the large conference display. "I've put together a short presentation to bring you up to speed on some unsettling developments within our global ocean ecosystems. For obvious reasons, the powers that be haven't found it in their best interest to report these events." They watched in silence for 10 minutes. Occasionally, Thoreau would sneak a sideways glance at Sajah, searching for any reaction. She remained outwardly unmoved, though she wasn't unaffected. As a seasoned business leader, she knew the importance of appearing neutral, even when the content stirred her emotions. When the video ended, Thoreau immediately launched into the next phase of his mission. "I'm not expecting you to change your entire business model based on a 10-minute video. However, with input from leading atmospheric scientists, geologists, economists, and investment experts, I've put together a prospectus outlining scenarios for both prevention and adaptation. We've likely passed the tipping point with rising ocean temperatures, but we still have time to implement programs that could mitigate the impacts of our current environmental trajectory. These programs are based on extensive research and a consensus within the global scientific community. This isn't about politics, it's about survival. I'm hoping you'll take the time to personally review this. Thoreau continued. From my experience, there's profit to be made in doing the right thing. It's not the kind of profit that shows up in quarterly cycles, but like all worthwhile investments, it serves the corporation, consumer, and community in the long term. In the near future, we will face a global disaster of catastrophic proportions. On behalf of Guru and the planet, I'm seeking your help to shift public, political, and corporate opinion. Somewhat defensive, Sajah asked, "Are you implying it's up to Pisces Corp specifically?" "It's up to all of us, individuals, communities, countries, and corporations. But as one of the world's largest companies, Pisces Corp could lead the way and be a catalyst for change." Sajah's eyes narrowed slightly. It was clear that some of the vessels in your video bore the Pisces logo. Do you intend to use this in your propaganda campaign? Is this some subtle form of blackmail? Thoreau felt as if she had slapped him. Her tone and choice of words, propaganda and blackmail, cut deep. He paused, then met her gaze. "Sajah, I'd like to believe you know me well enough by now to trust that I'm truthful at all costs. I'm not making this up. Nothing in this video is staged or taken out of context. I'm not pointing fingers at any single entity. It's not just Pisces. It's a global mindset of greed and short-term gain, oblivious to future consequences. This video is just a small sampling of the misuse of our planet's resources." Sajah sighed and stepped around her desk, gently taking his hand in hers. "I know you're a truthful man, and I love you for it. I respect your passion and admire your genius, but I think you might be overestimating my influence in a company as large as Pisces. I'll do what I can. Leave the video and prospectus, and I'll make sure they reach the right people." Thoreau shook her hand and thanked her for her time. As the door closed behind him, Sajah turned back to the window, staring out at the foggy panorama as dark clouds draped a gentle rain over the city below. We thank you for listening to another installment of this series. There are many more chapters to come, so we hope you subscribe and hit the bell so you can continue to join Epyphany and her tribe as they navigate the stormy seas into the transition.